There's a quiet mental struggle happening in the minds of many believers, though they might not admit it out loud. It's not just about doubt. It's about the constant friction between what they're told to believe and what they actually see, feel, and understand in real life. That psychological discomfort has a name: cognitive dissonance, and religion creates a fertile ground for it to thrive. Cognitive dissonance happens when people hold two or more contradictory beliefs, ideas, or values at the same time, and their brain tries to reduce the internal conflict. Religion demands belief in things that often contradict lived experience, observable evidence, or even common sense. And instead of encouraging resolution through truth, it encourages suppression, justification, or blind acceptance. Think about the emotional gymnastics required to accept that a loving, omnipotent deity allows endless suffering, famine, genocide, disease. To believe in divine justice, but watch the wicked prosper and the innocent suffer. To be told that life is sacred, yet also that sinners deserve eternal torment. These aren't just theological dilemmas. They're psychological ones, and they eat away at people in quiet moments they rarely speak about. Religion presents itself as a source of certainty, but it actually teaches people to get comfortable with contradictions. For example, the idea that God has a plan becomes a catch-all excuse for anything senseless or painful. A child dies? It's part of the plan. A disaster wipes out a city? It's a test. But what if that child was yours? What if that city was your home? The very human response would be grief, anger, confusion. But believers are taught to suppress that dissonance with submission. Some people do feel the internal conflict, but they're told that doubt is a weakness, that it's a test of faith, that questioning is sinful. So they live in a mental loop: believe, doubt, suppress the doubt, feel guilt, and repeat. This is not peace of mind. It's psychological tension dressed up as piety. One of the most damaging effects is that people learn to distrust their own reasoning. If your religion teaches that you're born flawed and sinful, then how can you ever fully trust your own mind? That seed of self-doubt is planted early. Kids are told to believe in miracles, to pray away their problems, to follow rules that don't make sense in the real world. And when reality contradicts those teachings, they're told the problem is with them, not the belief. This isn't just a private mental struggle. It plays out in how people make decisions about their health, their relationships, even politics. People vote against their own interests, deny scientific facts, and justify cruelty, all because of the mental gymnastics required to keep their religious worldview intact. The dissonance doesn't stay hidden. It shapes behavior, often in irrational or harmful ways. Take the case of someone who believes that premarital sex is sinful, but also feels natural human desires. Now they're stuck in a battle between biology and belief. Instead of adjusting the belief, they often internalize shame. They don't question the rule, they question their own worth. Multiply that across issues like sexuality, gender roles, contraception, divorce, and you get generations of people who have been taught to hate parts of themselves to maintain their faith. And the system reinforces itself. Churches, mosques, temples, they provide a community that praises obedience and punishes critical thought. People who do start questioning risk losing their family ties, their social circle, their sense of identity. So even when dissonance reaches a breaking point, it's easier to pretend than to confront it. That's not belief. It's fear disguised as devotion. Religious teachings often present an illusion of morality, telling people they're good if they follow arbitrary rules and bad if they don't. But what happens when those rules contradict basic human empathy? When people are told not to associate with others because they believe differently, when helping someone goes against doctrine? That's dissonance. And it forces a choice. Obey the rule or do what feels right. Most people will obey the rule, not because they're cruel, but because they've been trained to suppress their internal compass in favor of external authority. Consider this. If a person is taught that evolution is false, but spends their career working in a scientific field where evidence constantly supports it, they're forced to split their thinking into compartments. One part of their mind accepts facts. The other part clings to the belief. That split can't be reconciled honestly, so it becomes background noise, a silent tension always running in the background. This mental split has real consequences. Studies show that cognitive dissonance can increase anxiety, depression, and decision paralysis. When people feel like they can't trust their own thoughts, when they're constantly overriding their instincts, they lose confidence. They become more susceptible to manipulation, more reliant on authority figures to tell them what's right or wrong. That's not just a personal issue, it's a societal one. And let's not ignore the role of guilt. Religion often relies on guilt as a motivator, not because you did something objectively wrong, but because you thought about something you weren't supposed to. Even thoughts can be sins. That turns your own mind into the enemy. The simple act of thinking freely becomes a threat to your salvation. What kind of belief system teaches people to police their own thoughts? Many believers would say that religion gives them peace. But is it real peace, or just a momentary silence between waves of internal conflict? Is it peace, or is it avoidance? Because real peace doesn't require you to suppress reality. It doesn't demand that you deny your own reasoning. It doesn't punish you for asking honest questions. When someone starts to break free from these contradictions, there's usually a moment of clarity. A moment when the questions finally outweigh the fear. And once that happens, the entire framework begins to crumble. Because at its core, religion depends on people not fully connecting the dots, not fully confronting the inconsistencies. The whole structure is held together by emotional glue, not logical cement. This isn't about attacking individuals. It's about recognizing that systems that rely on mental compartmentalization aren't healthy. And when those systems call themselves sacred, they become even harder to question. But the cost of staying inside that mental trap is too high. It means living in a world where discomfort is painted as virtue, where doubt is disguised as loyalty, and where the truth is something you're taught to fear. Cognitive dissonance doesn't make someone weak. It makes them human. It means their brain is trying to resolve the conflict between what they're told and what they actually know. And the more honest they become with themselves, the more that tension rises, until something has to give. For many, it's easier to double down on belief. But for others, the only way forward is through the discomfort, through the questions, through the silence that comes when the old answers no longer make sense. And on the other side of that silence, there's a different kind of peace. One that isn't built on fear, guilt, or contradiction. One that doesn't need to silence reason to feel whole.